It started off just like any other day, just super excited to be going out there. My older brother Sam went out first. I was a little bit slow putting my wetsuit on and getting ready, so Sam and Joe were already out there and I started paddling out. It was really nice just to be there before everyone else and to spend a day in the ocean, in the waves with only 3 of us out. It was a really nice start to the day.
Zach Golbiowski was 15 at the time and had been hanging out to go surfing with his mate Joe. His brother had taken him to Wharton Bay, about an hour east of Esperance on the southern coast of Western Australia. For over 40 years, his family had been visiting this idyllic holiday spot during the summer months of December and January, staying at the local caravan park. But this day wasn't going to be like any other.
We hadn't been surfing for very long. We'd probably been out there maybe half an hour, maybe 40 minutes. I'd just got a wave and started to paddle back out when everything went super quiet. I knew something was up because it's such a surreal experience, and I guess those few seconds was just my body recognizing what had just happened. And Sam came over and tried to put me on his little surfboard, and my bottom half of my body came out of the water and I could see the extent of what had happened.
Zach grew up in Esperance. He'd lived his life around the ocean. His older brothers were surfers and he was keen to follow their path. Surfing and the freedom of the ocean are very much a part of his life. To experience the dangers that lurk beneath the surface was never on his radar.
My mind probably didn't know what was happening, my body didn't know what was happening, but when Sam came over and put me on his board and I could see the remainder of my leg sticking up in the air and blood, it was a horrible thing to see, but it was at that point that I knew that I'd definitely been attacked by a shark.
So where the great white had come in from the side attack had taken off one leg and the teeth had embedded in the other one. I mean, when the sharks are hitting, it's a lot of force, a lot of power, and those teeth are very razor sharp. They're made to just cut through flesh.
Great whites take about 15 to 20 years to mature, by which time they'll be roughly 3 to 3.5 meters long. At this stage, they'll start producing a couple of young every couple of years. This is a shark that can grow up to 6.5 meters long, which is a massively large animal, and at that size, the shark is likely to be around 70 years old.
So these big sharks are swimming around there now. They would still remember what was happening in the whaling days, where whaling was occurring on the beaches. And sometimes you talk to locals, they go, oh, we always see a great white off this beach. Oh, there was a whale carcass buried there 20 years ago. And there would still be odour coming out through the sand from carcasses buried 20, 30 years ago. So it's no wonder the sharks would come into those kind of areas each year, just have a look around, see if there's another dead whale.
The most common prey that great whites are looking for is seals, turtles, or dolphins, and so the sharks are hunting right up against the coast, particularly in coastal areas where there are waves, where the visibility is small, where the prey lives, and of course, these are also the spots that people like to go surfing.
It's just a case of mistaken identity. They're not going out looking for people. What they're doing is looking for their natural prey. And a lot of people think great whites are oceanic sharks, but a lot of the tracking research, particularly the satellite tags these days, reveals that great whites are a coastal shark and they move long distances. So they'll migrate from South Australia all the way up to northern Western Australia, even into the Great Barrier Reef in Queensland.
So this places the great white around all but the top coastal regions of Australia. However, there are only about a couple of hundred of these animals on the east coast and on the west coast. The numbers aren't high, so the chances of being attacked are slim, but without doubt, the attacks are brutal.
So when the shark bit me, it was just above the knee. It managed to take my right leg off basically in one chunk. That's my 2 legs on the surfboard, and the shark's come from the side. The top of its jaws has grabbed my left leg and in the process completely taken my right leg off. The injuries to my left leg were quite bad as well and quite severe. My left leg was only really inches from being taken off at the end of the day. By the scars on my legs, you can see how close it was.
So close and so far from treatment, the shark was still circling while Sam was trying to rescue Zach.
So as soon as it happened, there was obviously commotion and splashing in the water. When I surfaced, I yelled out to Sam. Sam obviously needed to come and get me and save me, and
Joe ran to the car park to see if anyone else had arrived. There was too much to do on their own.
By this stage, I'm going in and out of consciousness. It felt like an eternity getting back into shore, but as soon as my head hit the sand and I could feel the sand underneath me, then that was the second hurdle out of the way and we were out of danger from the shark.
Joe had struck gold. A couple had just arrived to go fishing. They were able to drive their small station wagon onto the beach, and together they tried to figure out what to do. They needed to remain calm. They needed to think quickly. They needed to save Zach.
Sam managed to find an extension lead in the back of the car and tourniquet that around the remainder of my thigh to prevent blood loss. Quick thinking by everyone there, Sam putting the tourniquet around me and then wrapping up with whatever they could find, rags and shirts and a jumper. Put the back seats down and put me in the back of the car and started the drive to who knows where.
For Zach, the pain was starting to sink in. He remembers arriving at the caravan park only 5 minutes away. However, by then, he was having trouble breathing.
And I remember the caravan park owner, him coming out and the look on his face, he looked like he'd just seen a ghost. So I was okay, but I remember when I saw him, I thought, well, he was looking at me like this guy doesn't have any chance at all.
Zach's wetsuit was cut through the middle to help him breathe. Contact had been made with the hospital. An ambulance was going to meet them on the hour-long trek to town. Plus, there was a nurse who lived nearby, so they picked her up on the way.
I remember at one point feeling completely calm. I had my arms behind my head. Sam was in the back of me and had my leg up, and I could see the extent of the injuries on my left leg. I could see muscle oozing out, and it was horrible. I was trying to survive the whole thing, and Joe and Sam and the couple that were around me as well, they were speaking positive to me and telling me everything was going to be okay.
When you think of a shark, it's like an underwater AWACS aircraft, from the military. It's a mega sensory machine. They've got one more sense than us, so they're able to detect electrical fields in the water. But they use all their different sensors at different ranges. So for a great white cruising up the coast, the first thing it's doing is listening for noise.
Sound travels through water hundreds of kilometers, and a shark can hear quite a few kilometers away. So if there's an animal struggling in the water, the shark will often head toward it. If there's a smell or odors in the water coming off, say, a seal colony, they're also onto it. They can detect one drop of scent in 10 billion parts of water. So these sharks can smell from kilometers away.
When they get closer to the prey, then they start to use their eyesight. Now, sharks can see a lot further than us underwater, sort of as a general rule of thumb, about twice as far.
They're looking for shapes in the water, and they're particularly looking for shapes that they're targeting. And once they've seen their prey, they'll come in looking for an attack.
We're talking about an animal hitting the prey at sort of like 25, 30 kilometres an hour. They're trying to get in there fast, hit the prey, bite it, and let it go. So what they're doing is they're causing a massive trauma to the prey, because if you grab something like a seal, then the seal would thrash around and cause a lot of damage to the shark's mouth and the head where all the sensors are. They're just going for that fatal hit. Then they'll back off, wait for it to bleed to death and come and feed upon it. The other sense that the sharks have is just before they go in for the bite, because their heads are sensitive, they actually protect their eyeballs. So if the great white, the eyes actually roll back into the head, and at that last moment before the attack, they're blind.
They're now using their electrical sense. This is a very short-range sense that only works for a couple of meters, but it works impressively well.
And what the sharks have is a series of black dots all over their snout. And they're these little electrical receptors called the ampulla lorenzini. And that allows the sharks to detect bioelectric fields in the ocean. When we're in the ocean environment, around all living creatures there's a bioelectric field. And the shark can target in on these at the last moment of attack.
And at that moment, there's contact, and then there's taste. Sharks are really using their mouth as the final test to taste and feel what the prey is.
In a lot of cases, when it's not their natural prey, like a surfboard or something like that, they'll hit it once, back off, and think, oh, it's the wrong thing, and leave it. And just swim away from a mouthful of fiberglass. And also it tastes wrong as well.
However, when you've been hit, it certainly doesn't seem that simple. And it certainly doesn't feel as though the shark is just going to swim away.
Started to take off, and about 10 strokes into my paddle, it was just an almighty bang, just an absolute crash. I went up in the air, probably a metre or two. My friends tell me that when the shark came up, it lifted the ski out of the water about 2 or 3 metres and tipped me in.
Martin Kane was learning what it would feel like to come face to face with a great white off the Western Australian coast near Perth, a coastline that has seen many tragedies.
As I fell backwards, I could sort of see a shape, but I just didn't know, nothing made sense to me. My mind was going into this trip saying, gee, what was that? What was it, a boat? I didn't hear any motors, but it sounded like a car crash. The ski actually exploded because it's a sealed unit. When I surfaced in the water next to the shark, all I could see was my ski going all over the place.
Having a great white next to you, obsessed by something else, can buy a little time to work out your next move.
It had the ski in its mouth. I was just shaking the hell out of it. So I basically stopped in the water. I said, no, that's it, I'm dead. There's no way I'm going to get back to shore. So I grabbed my paddle. From what I'd read in the papers, if you sort of smack a shark in the nose, it might go away. I'd straddled the water there for what felt like a lifetime, but it was still going up my ski.
Unfortunately, what does happen in a natural shark attack is with a shark coming in at high speed and hitting prey like that, it can cause a lot of damage to surfers and people on kayaks and things like that. They're just seeing a faint shadow on the surface and going up and having a go. And that's when they realise it's the wrong thing, and in most cases the shark will swim off.
In most cases they will, but the fear is overwhelming. Martin needs to be rescued. Zach is still trying to get to an ambulance. Richard has a few stories of his own to share, and we've yet to meet an adventurer who freedives with great whites. All of this to come later in the program.
So shark crunched my ski with its jaws, and the ski was just being minced around, and I thought, we have a problem, Houston. We really have a problem. I'm not going to make it back to shore. If this thing lets go, I'm finished.
Martin Kane was out for an early morning paddle with his mates at Mullaloo Beach in Perth, Western Australia.
We were probably 10 or 15 minutes into the paddle, and all the guys stopped to look at a whole pod of dolphins. And I thought, oh yeah, just another dolphin. I just kept on going. And I would have been about 50 metres ahead of the pack. The sun was just rising. The water was shimmering. It's just absolutely ideal morning.
The piece shattered with the hit of the great white. Martin was still unsure what was going on, but when he surfaced, he was next to the shark.
It was just total acceptance in my mind that I was dead. I thought, this shark is going to come in and bite me in two, or going to take my legs off.
Survival mode had kicked in for everyone else. Rescuing Martin was the only focus.
My friend Dale came around, was coming in opposite me, and I screamed at him, get out of here, it's a shark. And he didn't take any notice of me. He paddled around the back of the shark. I started to swim away, threw my paddle at the shark. So, you can have that.
His mates got Martin back to shore. He was staggering around, still in disbelief of what had just happened.
Suddenly, everything went quiet, and all I could see was this dorsal fin going around my ski. Just sort of like a lap of honour, I thought, oh God, how lucky am I?
The shark would have been traveling at a rate of knots, around 40 kilometers an hour. Martin would have never seen it coming.
If it happened again, I'd be swimming you wouldn't see me for dust. But this was just a sort of acceptance that I was dead and I couldn't do anything about it. Just a strange sensation.
A great white can go sort of 80 to 100 kilometres in a day. The tracking data shows that these animals have memories. And so they go back to areas where they've successfully fed in the past. So they're very strategic predators, and they have a really good map and calendar built into their system. So they're not just out there blundering around, they're going to different areas for a reason, and it's all about food when it comes to sharks.
For Zach Golbiowski, he was just another prey item to the shark.
When I saw my leg and I saw that I'd been bitten by a shark, I thought of the Paralympics for some reason, and I remember thinking about athletes running with prosthetic legs, and I thought to myself, they seem to do okay. So I think by that stage my body had obviously come to terms with what had happened.
Remaining amazingly calm helped to save Zach's life. By the time the paramedics attended to Zach, the attack was starting to take its toll. He had no doubt he would survive, but he had no painkillers. He'd lost a lot of blood.
it was a hard one for me. I just try and stay positive with everyone else looking like they'd seen a ghost.
From Esperance, Zach was flown by the Royal Flying Doctor Service to Royal Perth Hospital in the capital of Western Australia, where they started surgery on his leg.
When I was in the back of the car on the way into Esperance, I remember telling my friend Joe to write on a bit of paper that, I was one of Jehovah's Witnesses and that I wouldn't be taking blood transfusions. So growing up, always being a witness, we've always known about this and we know the alternatives. We've got amazing doctors here in Australia, so they were more than happy to go along with it as well. I'm not really sure how much blood I lost, but the synthetic stuff they put in me seemed to obviously work, and I'm still here now, so there's proof that it works.
Zach had taken a big hit. He was in intensive care. The hospital staff weren't taking any risks with the possible infection from the shark.
I didn't speak for a week after it happened. I don't know why I didn't. I just didn't speak. I was obviously trying to figure out what happened. I didn't eat anything for that week.
Zach was in hospital for a couple of weeks, rehabilitation for 3 months, learning to walk again, and basically a year in and out of treatment. At 15 years of age, he was starting to face a lot of new challenges.
I guess it's quite ironic because I need something to do to take my mind off the leg most of the time, and surfing's one of those things that I do. I've got the mentality that it's happened to me, so it shouldn't happen again. The chances are quite slim, hopefully. The ocean's something that I've always been around. It's played such a vital part in my life. Such a massive event happened in the ocean, so I think it's only natural that I'll be drawn to it. It's healthy, I enjoy surfing. It's the one time where I don't have to worry about putting on my prosthetic leg. It's all arms out in the ocean when you're surfing, so I love it.
In my opinion, great white sharks are not very harmful to humans. The number of incidences, you can probably count on 1, maybe 2 hands per year, as compared to train accidents, car accidents, accidents with toasters. It's negligible.
William Winram has made his mark in the world freediving with great whites. For over 25 years, he's been researching sharks and their behavior. Humans aren't really what they're interested in, but they'll check you out.
There's plenty of aerial footage where you see great whites, you see people on the beach. There's no report of an attack or anything like that. They're curious. They're also dealing with having to hunt their food every day. They don't have supermarkets, we don't have labels, and the only way they know what we are is to taste us. That's why being vigilant when you're in their environment, looking out for them and spotting them before they get close enough to decide to take that taste test is important.
However, if you don't see the shark coming, there's no chance for negotiation. Zach and Martin were both in this situation. An attack out of nowhere. Martin was able to walk away, but for Zach, it was a different story.
About 2 days later, the fishermen were on the beach and were driving along and saw something in the distance washed up on the beach, and it actually was my leg. Yeah, I know, it's a big one. But yeah, so there was nothing that could be done by that stage, but that proves that sharks obviously don't like the taste of humans. That was a bit of a slap in the face, really. I mean, if the shark had just gone to all that effort of affecting my life that much, I at least think it should have had a meal out of it.
What's unique about the great white is its ability to switch on, its instinctual reaction to potential prey or potential food. For us working with them in the water, we're quite aware that more than any other shark, we have to be 100% on our A game at all times. There's no margin for making mistakes. You make a mistake, you could pay a heavy price. You know, we never forget that it's an apex predator.
Richard Fitzpatrick has had an extraordinary encounter that he can laugh about now. But at the time, the apex predator looked like winning the game.
In my early years, I was doing a lot of work on great whites, and I had a pole cam working off the back of a research boat, and we were throwing baits into the water and pulling the sharks in close so then I could film the sharks to get a visual identification. To see what I was filming, I actually had a little TV monitor strapped around my on my chest.
A 5-meter great white swam past the boat while Richard was filming, and unbeknown to him, the shark took control of the research.
Video camera in the water gave off an amazing electrical signal. The shark just came up and ate it. But unfortunately, it was attached to me all around the neck, so when the shark turned around and swam off, it actually dragged me into the water with it. And so it swam down the side of the boat with me getting dragged through the water. So the guys in the boat actually caught my feet, hung on to me. It was a bit of a struggle and the shark spat the camera out. Sheer terror. It was frightening. And when I came off that trip, I actually came back and proposed to my girlfriend, who became my ex-wife. So I tell people, don't make a rash decision after a near-death experience.
It's agreed that the chance of an attack by a great white is small. However, it does happen, and it's not often a good story.
Know the area you're choosing to go in the water to surf. Not early in the morning, not late in the day when the sun is low on the horizon, and it depends on the location.
Staying away from high-risk areas where the fish are running, where the seals are breeding, where the turtles are breeding and stuff like that. It's just using common sense to stay out of high-risk locations at certain times.
You need to understand the species, you need to understand the area you're surfing and what the risks are. And it may not be a great white, it may be another species of shark.
I've never had any hard feelings towards the shark. When we go in the ocean, it's their domain. We go in there, we enjoy where they live, so